I always thought my life with Emily was a masterpiece, a canvas painted with trust and quiet routines. We'd been married 12 years, living in a cozy house on Maple Street, where the neighbors waved and the dogwood trees bloomed every spring. I'm Daniel, a tax accountant with a penchant for order, spreadsheets, schedules, the hum of predictability. Emily was the opposite. A freelance artist, wild-haired and impulsive, her laughter filling our home like sunlight. We balanced each other, or so I believed. That belief shattered on a Tuesday afternoon in late October, when I came home early from a canceled client meeting. The house was quiet, too quiet. Emily's car was in the driveway, her paint-splattered sneakers by the door. I called her name, my voice echoing off the hardwood. No answer. A faint sound, a low, rhythmic thud, came from upstairs. My stomach tightened. I climbed the steps, each creak amplifying the unease gnawing at me. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open and froze. There she was, my Emily, tangled in our sheets with someone I recognized instantly. Tom Hanks. Yes, the Tom Hanks, Forrest Gump, Cast Away, America's beloved everyman. He was in my bed, his famous grin nowhere to be seen, replaced by a flushed, frantic expression as he scrambled to cover himself. I stood there, dumbstruck, as Emily shrieked and yanked the blanket up to her chin. "Daniel, oh my God, it's not what it looks like," she cried. But her words were absurd, a cartoonish lie. Tom Hanks, Tom Hanks, mumbled apologies, grabbing his jeans from the floor. "I didn't know she was married, man, I swear," he said, his voice still carrying that familiar drawl I'd heard in a dozen movies. My brain short-circuited. How did this even happen? Why was a Hollywood icon in my suburban bedroom, ruining my marriage? I didn't scream or lunge. I just turned and walked downstairs, my legs wooden, my mind a blizzard of disbelief. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator, as their footsteps thudded above. Emily came down first, her face streaked with tears, babbling excuses. "It was a one-time thing, Daniel. I met him at an art gallery event. He was so charming. I got swept away." I cut her off with a raised hand. Tom emerged next, fully dressed, avoiding my eyes. "I'll just go," he said, slipping out the front door like a scolded teenager. Emily begged me to talk, but I couldn't. Not yet. The betrayal wasn't just her. It was the absurdity of it, the sheer impossibility. I needed to process, to plan. That night, I slept on the couch, her sobs drifting down from upstairs. Revenge wasn't a word I'd ever lived by, but it planted a seed in me then, dark and unyielding. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and Emily's tentative footsteps in the kitchen. She'd made breakfast, pancakes, my favorite, as if syrup could stitch up the gaping wound she'd carved. I didn't touch it. "Daniel, please, let's talk," she said, her green eyes wide with desperation. I looked at her, really looked, and saw a stranger. The woman I'd loved, who'd vowed fidelity at an altar draped in lilies, had invited a celebrity into our bed. I didn't yell. I just asked, "How long?" She hesitated, then admitted it had been 3 months. 3 months of lies, of her sneaking off to gallery openings, while I balanced ledgers and paid our bills. I left for work, needing space to think. My office was a sanctuary of numbers, but today, they blurred into chaos. Tom Hanks. How did he fit into this? Emily later told me the story. She'd met him at a charity auction in Chicago, where one of her paintings was up for bid. He'd complimented her work, bought the piece, and asked her for drinks. Drinks turned into late-night calls, then clandestine meetings. He'd flown into town on a private jet just to see her, she said, her voice tinged with a sickening pride. I wanted to vomit. This wasn't some local fling with a bartender or a coworker. It was a betrayal so grandiose it mocked me. By lunch, I'd decided I couldn't let it go. Emily's affair wasn't just a crack in our marriage. It was a demolition. But I didn't want a divorce, not yet. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, to taste humiliation as bitter as mine. I started researching Tom Hanks, not the actor but the man. His public persona was squeaky clean. Family guy, philanthropist, everyone's favorite uncle. Yet here he was, sneaking around with my wife. I dug deeper, scouring tabloids, forums, anything that might hint at cracks in his armor. Nothing concrete, but I didn't need dirt yet. I needed a plan. That evening, I came home to Emily pacing the living room. "I'll do anything to fix this," she pleaded. I nodded, calm as a stone. "Good," I said. "You can start by telling me every detail." She flinched but complied, spilling a nauseating tale of secret dates and whispered promises. I listened, memorizing every word, every location. She thought I was seeking closure. She was wrong. I was gathering ammunition. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about ending things. It was about rewriting the story, making them both regret every stolen moment. Days turned into weeks, and I played the part of wounded husband flawlessly. Emily tiptoed around me, cooking elaborate dinners, leaving apologetic notes on my pillow. I ate the food, read the notes, but gave her nothing, no anger, no forgiveness. Silence was my weapon, and it drove her mad. She'd cry at night, thinking I couldn't hear, but I did. I heard everything. Meanwhile, my mind churned with possibilities. Tom Hanks had slunk back to his Hollywood life, probably assuming I'd fade into obscurity. Another cuckolded nobody. He underestimated me. I started small. Emily had given me dates and places, hotels, restaurants, a secluded cabin he'd rented an hour north of town. I cross-referenced them with his public schedule, piecing together a timeline. He'd been filming a movie nearby, a period drama about a lighthouse keeper, which explained his proximity. But the cabin intrigued me most. She described it in detail. Cedar walls, a stone fireplace, a view of the lake. I drove there one weekend while Emily thought I was at a tax seminar. The place was real, remote, and still listed under a shell company I traced back to his production team. Perfect. I began sketching my revenge, a slow burn rather than a quick strike. First, I needed leverage. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Ray, to tail Emily and dig into Hanks. Ray was discreet, expensive, but worth it. Within a week, he confirmed she'd stopped contacting Hanks. Scared straight, perhaps, but he uncovered something else. Hanks had a pattern. Other women, other cities, hushed up with NDAs and payoffs. My wife wasn't special. She was just another notch. That stung, but it fueled me. Back home, I kept Emily close, feigning reconciliation. "Maybe we can try therapy," I suggested one night over lasagna. Her face lit up, hope flaring. "Really?" she asked. I nodded, sipping my wine. Therapy was a ruse. I'd never trust her again, but it bought me time. Meanwhile, I started planting seeds. I casually mentioned Tom Hanks in conversations with friends, watching her squirm. Saw he's filming nearby. Wonder what he's like in person. I'd say, my tone innocent. Her cheeks would flush and she'd change the subject. I enjoyed that, the subtle torment. It was only the beginning. By December, my plan took shape. Ray delivered a dossier on Hanks thicker than a phone book, photos, emails, witness statements from past flings. The man was careful, but not careful enough. One gem stood out. A blurry snapshot of him and Emily at a diner. Her hand on his arm, time-stamped 2 days before I'd caught them. Proof undeniable. I tucked it away, a loaded gun for later. But I didn't stop there. I wanted more than exposure. I wanted ruin, something theatrical, something they'd never forget. I turned my attention to Emily's art. She'd always been proud of her work, vibrant abstracts that galleries praised. Hanks had bought one, she'd said, a piece called Driftwood Dreams. I found it on his Instagram, hanging in his Malibu home, captioned, "Inspired by a Muse." My blood boiled. That painting, born from our life together, now mocked me from his wall. I decided it'd be my first strike. I contacted a friend, Mike, a tech whiz with a shady side hustle in digital manipulation. "Can you hack an Instagram account?" I asked over beers. He grinned. "For you? Sure." Mike worked fast. 2 days later, Hanks's account posted a doctored image of Driftwood Dreams. The colors warped, Emily's signature replaced with Cheater's Muse in bold red. The caption read, Art reflects life. Fans flooded the comments, confused, then speculative. Gossip sites picked it up, whispering about a scandal. Emily saw it too. "Daniel, did you see this?" she asked, voice trembling, showing me her phone. I shrugged. Weird coincidence. She didn't suspect me, not yet, but I saw the fear in her eyes. Good. Next, I targeted her pride. She'd bragged about Hanks's charm, his attention. I take that away. I leaked an anonymous tip to a tabloid. Tom Hanks caught in suburban affair. Married artist involved. No names, just enough to stir the pot. Within days, paparazzi swarmed our town, sniffing for clues. Emily panicked, locking herself in her studio, muttering about mistakes. I played dumb, comforting her while stoking the flames. The revenge was unfolding. A symphony of chaos I conducted in secret. Christmas loomed, and the tension in our house was a living thing. Emily barely slept, jumping at every car that passed, convinced the press was closing in. They weren't. Yet, but the tabloid rumors had legs, and Hanks's team was scrambling. Ray intercepted a call between his publicist and a lawyer, discussing damage control. "They're worried," Ray told me, handing over a transcript. "He's denying everything, but the optics are bad." I smiled. Optics were just the start. I escalated. Using a burner phone, I sent Emily a text. "I know what you did with him. Everyone will." No signature, just menace. She burst into the kitchen minutes later, pale as snow. "Daniel, look at this," she cried, shoving the phone at me. I feigned shock. "Who sent that?" She didn't know, but the guilt was eating her alive. I let her stew, watching her unravel. Meanwhile, I mailed an envelope to Hanks's agent. Copies of Ray's photos, the diner snapshot circled in red. No note, no demands. Let him sweat. The holidays gave me cover. Family visited, and I played the doting husband, all smiles and eggnog, while Emily forced cheer through gritted teeth. Our guests noticed her nerves but chalked it up to stress. I didn't correct them. After they left, I struck again. I'd found an old voicemail from Hanks on her phone. Deleted, but recoverable with Mike's help. "Can't wait to see you, Muse," he'd purred. I amplified it, distorted it, and uploaded it to a burner YouTube account titled Hollywood Secrets. It spread like wildfire across X, fans dissecting every syllable. Emily confronted me that night, wild-eyed. "This has to be you, Daniel. Who else knows?" I stared at her, calm as ice. "Knows what, Em? That you betrayed me with a movie star." She gasped, then sobbed, collapsing onto the couch. I didn't comfort her. I walked away, leaving her with the wreckage. Hanks's reputation teetered. Hers crumbled. My revenge was a slow poison, and I was only halfway done. January arrived, a cold, gray shroud over Maple Street. Emily had become a ghost in our home, drifting from room to room, her paintbrushes untouched. The YouTube clip of Hanks's voicemail had hit 1 million views, and the internet was a feeding frenzy, memes, theories, hashtags like #Musegate trending on X. His PR team issued a vague statement about misunderstandings, but the damage was done. Emily's name hadn't surfaced publicly yet, but the anonymous leaks I'd orchestrated kept the spotlight uncomfortably close. She'd stopped leaving the house, convinced every stranger was a reporter. I let her believe it. I wasn't done with Hanks. His wholesome image was cracking, and I wanted it shattered. Ray dug deeper, uncovering a goldmine. A former assistant who'd quit under mysterious circumstances. Over coffee in a dingy diner, she spilled the tea. Hanks had a habit of charming women at events, promising roles or mentorship, then ghosting them. "He's not evil," she said, stirring her mug. "Just reckless." She'd kept emails, though flirty, suggestive ones he'd sent from a personal account. I paid her a hefty sum for copies. My accountants thrift out the window. Those emails were dynamite, and I held the match. Back home, I tightened the screws on Emily. I started leaving reminders of her betrayal everywhere. His movies on the TV, paused on scenes of betrayal or heartbreak. A photo of the cabin framed on the mantel, captioned memories. She'd stare at them, lips trembling, then flee to her studio. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered one night, clutching a glass of wine. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "Doing what?" "I'm just decorating." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering, but she had no proof. I wanted her to doubt her sanity, to feel the betrayal's echo in every corner of her life. My next move was audacious. Using Mike's skills, I hacked into a fan site dedicated to Hanks and posted a fabricated leak. A screenshot of one of his emails, edited to name Emily explicitly as his suburban muse. The site exploded, fans arguing over its authenticity. Gossip rags picked it up, and soon local news vans parked outside our house, cameras trained on our windows. Emily sobbed, begging me to call them off. "I can't control the press," I lied, sipping my coffee. The chaos was glorious, a storm I'd summoned with precision. The media circus peaked mid-January. A sleazy tabloid ran a front-page story, "Tom Hanks's secret suburban affair? Who's the mystery woman?" No photos of Emily yet, but the speculation pointed straight at our town. Neighbors whispered, casting sideways glances. Emily stopped answering the door, leaving me to shoo away reporters with a tight smile. "No comment," I'd say, playing the stoic husband. Inside, I reveled in her isolation. She'd wanted glamour, attention from a star. Now she had it, twisted into a nightmare. Hanks fought back, announcing a tell-all interview on a major network to set the record straight. I watched the live broadcast with Emily, her knees drawn up on the couch, eyes red. He sat there, earnest as ever, claiming the rumors were exaggerated, and the voicemail taken out of context. "I've made mistakes," he admitted, voice soft, "but I'm not that guy." The host nodded sympathetically and social media split, half buying his charm, half calling him out. Emily exhaled, hope flickering. I smothered it. "He's good at this," I said casually. "Almost makes you forget the cabin." She flinched and I smiled. Behind the scenes, I mailed the assistant's emails to a rival network, unedited this time. They aired snippets the next day, contradicting his interview. "I can't stop thinking about you," he'd written to a woman in Atlanta, months before Emily, then another in Seattle. The hypocrisy reignited the firestorm. His fans wavered, his sponsors murmured about pulling ads. I leaned back in my office chair, watching the fallout on my laptop. Emily's fling wasn't unique. She was just one in a line, a disposable muse. That truth would gut her when it hit. I kept her off balance. One night, I accidentally left my phone open to a fake email I drafted. To her. From Hanks. "I miss you, Muse. This mess will blow over." She found it, confronted me in a panic. "Did he contact you?" "What's this?" I shrugged. "Must have been a glitch. Or maybe he's not done with you." Her face crumpled, and she locked herself in the bathroom. I didn't need him to write it. The illusion was enough. Her paranoia was my masterpiece, and I was painting it stroke by stroke. February brought snow and a sharper edge to my revenge. Emily's art career stalled. Galleries dropped her, citing distractions. She blamed the rumors, not knowing I'd whispered to a few curators about her unreliability. Her pride, her identity was eroding, and I watched it happen with cold satisfaction. Hanks, meanwhile, canceled a film premiere, citing personal reasons. His golden reputation was tarnishing, and I wasn't finished. I had one card left from Ray's dossier. A grainy video from a hotel security camera, showing him and Emily slipping into a room, her laugh unmistakable. I didn't release it yet. Timing was everything. Instead, I turned the screws at home. I invited mutual friends over, ones who'd sensed the tension but stayed neutral. Over dinner, I steered the conversation to infidelity, dropping hints about someone famous ruining a marriage. Emily squirmed, her fork clattering against her plate. "Daniel, stop," she hissed under her breath. I ignored her, letting the group speculate. "Sounds like a movie plot," our friend Lisa said, laughing. "Maybe starring Tom Hanks." The table erupted, and Emily excused herself, pale as death. I followed her to the kitchen, feigning concern. "You okay?" She glared. "You're enjoying this." I didn't deny it. The video was my next play. I sent it anonymously to a gossip vlogger with a massive following, along with a note. "This is the muse he won't admit to." It hit YouTube at midnight, racking up views by dawn. The comments were brutal. "That's his type. Poor Rita." And Emily's face, though blurred, was recognizable to anyone who knew her. She saw it before I did, bursting into my office with her laptop. "This is us. How did they get this?" she shrieked. I frowned, playing dumb. "Maybe he leaked it to save himself." She bought it, fury turning to despair. I left her to stew, knowing the truth would never occur to her. Hanks's team went silent, no denials this time. The video was too damning. I leaned into the chaos, calling Ray. "Find me more anything." He chuckled. "You're a bulldog, Dan." I didn't care. This wasn't about justice, it was about annihilation. Emily's world was shrinking, and Hanks's was cracking. I was the architect, and the structure was almost complete. By late February, Emily was a shell. The video had spread across platforms, her identity no longer a secret in our circles. Friends texted me, shocked. "Is that really her?" I confirmed it with a heavy sigh, the betrayed husband seeking solace. They rallied around me, shunning her. She lost her oldest friend, Claire. After a tearful phone call I overheard, "I can't believe you do this to Daniel." Emily's sobs echoed through the house, and I felt nothing but grim triumph. Her betrayal had cost her everything, her art, her social life, her dignity. I'd made sure of it. Hanks faced his own reckoning. The video sparked lawsuits. His assistant sued for harassment, citing the emails as proof of a toxic work environment. Sponsors dropped him. His next film was delayed indefinitely. I watched his downfall on news channels, his face drawn, that famous charm extinguished. I'd mailed one final package to his agent, a photo of Driftwood Dreams, shredded, with Muse No More scrawled across it. No return address, but he'd know. I wanted him to feel the loss, to see my hand in the rubble. At home, I staged the final act for Emily. I packed a suitcase, telling her I was leaving for a business trip. She begged me to stay, clutching my arm. "I'll fix this, Daniel, I swear." Pulled away. "You fixed it when you chose him." I didn't leave, though. I hid in a motel nearby, letting her think I'd gone. Then, using Mike's tech, I remotely triggered our home security cameras to play looped footage of Hanks's movies on every screen. Endless scenes of betrayal, abandonment. She called me, hysterical, leaving voicemails I ignored. "The TVs won't stop. What's happening?" I pictured her trapped in that house, surrounded by her guilt, and smiled. I returned after 2 days, finding her curled on the couch, eyes hollow. "What did you do?" she whispered. I shrugged. "Maybe it's karma." She didn't fight back. She was broken. My revenge had stripped her bare, and I wasn't done. The cruelty wasn't in the act. It was in the permanence, the way I'd rewritten her life into a cage of her own making. March dawned, and the air felt charged with finality. Emily barely spoke, her days spent staring out windows or sketching aimlessly. Dark, jagged lines, nothing like her old work. The house was a mausoleum, our marriage a corpse I refused to bury. Hanks had vanished from headlines, his career in limbo, but I tracked whispers of his retreat to a private island, hiding from the storm I'd unleashed. Good. Let him rot there. My revenge was nearly complete, but the crescendo awaited. I planned a public finale. Emily's gallery had scheduled a retrospective of her work months ago, a last-minute cancellation she hadn't fought. I reinstated it, forging her signature on emails to the curator. "She's ready to reclaim her story," I wrote. The night arrived, a sleek event space downtown buzzing with art snobs and curious locals. I convinced Emily to go, promising closure. "Show them you're stronger," I said, my tone gentle. She nodded, fragile but desperate to salvage something. The exhibit opened with her classics, vibrant swirls, bold strokes. Then, halfway through, the lights dimmed, and a projector flickered on. The video played, Hanks and Emily, unblurred, undeniable, followed by a montage. His emails, her painting in his house, the shredded driftwood dreams. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily froze, then bolted for the exit, but I'd locked the side doors earlier. She faced the room, tears streaming, as whispers turned to shouts. Is that her? With Tom Hanks. I stepped forward, microphone in hand, feigning shock. I didn't know this was planned. I lied. I'm as stunned as you. She fled through the main entrance, humiliated beyond repair. The press pounced, photos of her tear-streaked face online within hours. I stayed, accepting sympathy, cementing my role as the wronged hero. Back home, she packed a bag, leaving a note. I can't stay. I let her go. Hanks's island couldn't shield him from the renewed outrage. His legacy was ash. My revenge was complete. Her life erased, his myth destroyed. I sat in the empty house, victorious, the silence my trophy. Emily's departure left the house hollow, a museum of our shattered life. Her notes sat on the kitchen counter, ink smudged from tears. I can't stay. I'm sorry. I didn't chase her. She'd run to her sister's place in Ohio. I learned later through Ray, who kept tabs like a hawk. The gallery fiasco had broken her spirit. Photos of her fleeing, wild-eyed and disheveled, splashed across tabloids and X with captions like, Muse meltdown. I'd orchestrated that night to perfection, and the world devoured her shame. My victory tasted sharp, metallic, but I wasn't sated yet. Hanks remained my loose end. His island hideaway, some speck off the coast of Belize, wasn't as secret as he thought. Ray's contacts, a network of shady boat captains and ex-paparazzi, pinpointed it. I didn't need to confront him in person. Distance was my ally. I'd already stripped his reputation, but I wanted his isolation to choke him. I contacted a freelance journalist, a hungry kid named Tara, and fed her everything. Ray's dossier, the emails, the video, even Emily's tearful voicemails from the motel days. Make it big, I told her, wiring her a chunk of my savings. Make it hurt. Tara's exposé hit online a week later, a sprawling piece titled, The Fall of America's Dad. It detailed his pattern, women wooed and discarded, NDAs silencing the fallout, naming Emily as the tipping point. Photos accompanied it. The cabin, the diner, his shredded painting. Social media erupted again, #HanksDown trending globally. His island couldn't shield him from that. I imagined him reading it, alone, his famous grin replaced by a grimace. Good. Let him stew in the wreckage I'd built. At home, I dismantled Emily's studio. Her canvases, half-finished dreams, went into the fireplace, curling into ash. Her brushes, her paints, trashed. I kept one painting, a small one of us from early in our marriage, and hung it in the hall. A reminder, not of love, but of what she'd thrown away. Friends called, checking on me, their pity a balm I didn't need. I'm fine, I'd say, and I was. Revenge had hollowed me out, but it left me standing taller than ever. Spring crept in, the dogwoods blooming as if mocking the ruin around me. Emily's absence was a quiet triumph, but whispers reached me. She tried to sell her story to a local paper, painting herself as the victim. Seduced by fame, abandoned by love, the pitch went. I laughed when Ray told me she'd always had a flair for drama. I quashed it fast, leaking her own words from those early confessions. Dates, lies, the cabin, to the same paper. They dropped her, unwilling to touch the mess. Her voice was gone, drowned by mine. Hanks faced worse. Tara's article won awards and Hollywood turned on him. His production company folded. His island retreat swarmed by drones snapping photos of a gaunt, unshaven man pacing the shore. A documentary was in the works, The Hanks Scandal, promising interviews with his ex-assistants and, rumor had it, Emily. She declined, Ray said, too broken to face cameras. I didn't care. Her silence suited me. She'd lost the right to narrate this. I started rebuilding my life, but not as Daniel the accountant. I quit my job, cashed out savings, and bought a small bar downtown. Maple Haven, I called it, a nod to the street where it all unraveled. Locals loved it, drawn by the story they half knew. I was the guy who'd survived a Hollywood betrayal. I didn't correct them. The bar thrived, a new empire born from ashes. Nights, I'd sit behind the counter, pouring drinks, watching patrons laugh and flirt, their lives untouched by my storm. It was peaceful in a way, but the fire still smoldered. I sent Emily one last message, a postcard from the bar's opening. Found my haven. Where's yours? No reply came, nor did I expect one. Hank's got his own gift. A signed photo of me at the bar, grinning, mailed to his island with no note. Let him wonder. My revenge wasn't loud anymore. It was a quiet, enduring scar I'd carved into their lives. I'd won, and they'd never forget it. Summer heat settled over the town, and Maple Haven became my fortress. Business boomed. Regulars swapped theories about my past, piecing together rumors with wild embellishments. Heard she ran off with Tom Hanks. One guy slurred over his beer. Heard he caught him red-handed. Another countered. I'd smile, wiping the bar, letting them build the legend. Truth was uglier, sharper, and mine to wield. Emily's sister called once, begging me to let her heal. I hung up. Healing wasn't my gift to give. Hanks's documentary aired in July, a 2-hour gut punch. Clips of his films juxtaposed with tearful accounts from women he'd charmed. None named Emily, but her shadow loomed. The final shot was him on his island, staring at the sea, a fallen king in exile. Critics raved, calling it raw and unflinching. I watched alone, a whiskey in hand, feeling the weight of my handiwork. His Oscar shelf was dust now, his legacy a cautionary tale. I'd done that. Me, the nobody from Maple Street. Emily surfaced briefly, an art fair in Cleveland, selling small pieces under a pseudonym. Ray sent me photos. Her hair dyed brown, her frame thin, her eyes vacant. Buyers avoided her booth, whispering behind hands. I didn't gloat. I mailed her a flyer for Maple Haven instead, my signature bold across it. She'd know I was thriving while she faded. Cruel? Maybe. But she'd chosen her path, and I'd paved it with thorns. I hired Mike full-time at the bar, his tech skills keeping our books clean and our security tight. He'd ask sometimes, "You ever think about stopping?" To shake my head. Stopping meant forgiving, and that wasn't in me. The revenge had morphed. It wasn't just theirs anymore. It was mine, a life reshaped by my will. I'd lost a wife, a marriage, but gained something fiercer. Control. The bar was proof, its walls echoing my triumph. Autumn painted the town gold, and Maple Haven hosted its first anniversary party. Live music, free drinks, a crowd spilling onto the street. My new life in full bloom. A stranger approached me that night, a woman with sharp eyes and a notepad. "You're Daniel, right? The guy from the Hanks mess." I nodded, wary. She was a writer, working on a book about modern revenge. "Your story's fascinating," she said. "Mind an interview?" I declined politely. My tale wasn't for sale, it was mine to keep. Emily's trail grew cold. Ray said she'd moved again, maybe out of state, living off odd jobs. Her art was dead, her name toxic in creative circles. I pictured her in some drab apartment, staring at blank walls, and felt a flicker of something. Pity? No closure. She'd built her cage. I'd locked the door. Hanks, too, stayed quiet, his island a prison of his own making. A grainy photo surfaced online. Him fishing, alone, captioned, "Where's Forrest now?" I framed it behind the bar, a trophy for my regulars to puzzle over. I started dating casually. A bartender named Jess, with a laugh that cut through my numbness. She didn't know the full story, didn't need to. "You've got a past," she'd say, pouring shots. Who doesn't? I liked her simplicity, her distance from the chaos I'd wrought. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a step beyond the void Emily left. Revenge had hollowed me, but it hadn't buried me. I was alive, sharper than before. The writer kept digging, sniffing around town. I warned Ray to watch her. She was too close to the truth. Not that I feared exposure. My hands were clean legally. But the story was mine, not hers. I crafted it, lived it, owned it. Emily and Hanks could rot in their shadows. I'd built a kingdom from their ruin, and no one could take that away. Winter returned, a year since it all began. Maple Haven glowed with string lights, a beacon on a snowy night. I stood behind the bar, watching Jess flirt with customers, feeling the pulse of a life I'd forged. The writer's book came out, Vengeance in the Digital Age, with a chapter on an unnamed suburban husband who toppled a star. Locals winked at me, knowing I didn't read it. I didn't need to. My revenge was complete, its echoes loud enough without pages. Emily sent a letter postmarked Oregon. "I'm trying to start over," she wrote. "I hope you're happy." No apology, just resignation. I burned it in the fireplace, the last thread of her gone. Ray confirmed she was waitressing, her art a memory. Hanks sold his island, retreating to a condo in obscurity, his name a punchline. The documentary won an Emmy, cementing his fall. I toasted it alone, a quiet nod to my work. Jess moved in that spring, her warmth softening the house's edges. "You're a mystery," she'd tease, tracing the framed photo of Hanks. I'd shrug. "Just a guy who fought back." She didn't press, and I didn't tell. The past was a weapon I'd wielded, then sheathed. Maple Haven thrived, my days filled with laughter and clinking glasses. I'd lost everything once: wife, trust, peace, but gained more: power, purpose, a legacy of my own. One night, a customer asked, "Ever miss her?" I paused, wiping a glass. "No," I said, and meant it. Emily and Hanks were footnotes now, their lives dim while mine blazed. Revenge hadn't just leveled the field, it had raised me above it. I locked up late, snow falling outside, and smiled into the dark. The story was mine, and I'd written the ending.